It is well known that excessive and often inappropriate use of antibiotics during the last few decades has led to the emergence of antimicrobial resistance, also called AMR. So the mechanism works broadly like this. The more we consume antibiotics, the more the bacteria that these medicines, these antibiotics are meant to kill, develop a resistance. This implies that antibiotics become ineffective in curing infection. So the more we consume, the more resistance is developed, the more the antibiotic becomes useless, essentially, for curing infections. And this is a very big issue because this means that what today we consider simple routine hospital procedures could turn out to be fatal. So, for example, a simple cesarean section could potentially lead to death, and a very small injury could end up with an amputated limb. And it has indeed been estimated that AMR is already imposing important social and economic costs. On the medical side, it's calculated that this is already now causing 25,000 deaths per year in the European Union only, and 700,000 per year worldwide. And also, it has been estimated that if this problem is not immediately addressed, by 2050, this will cause, AMR will cause more than 10 million deaths. And to give you an idea of the magnitude, this means that AMR would cause more death than cancer. On the economic side, this is already now costing about 1.5 billion per year in the EU, in the European Union only, due to increased healthcare costs and productivity losses. And again, the World Bank has warned that if the problem is not immediately addressed, by 2050, this could cause more economic damages than the 2008 financial crisis. In several sources that I had the opportunity to read, they even talk about the risk of an AMR pandemic. So, because this issue is important, it has been discussed by several international institutions, among which the European Commission, and indeed incentivizing research and development in the antibiotic field is currently one of the central objective of the EU health authorities. And they also issued this report, in case you are interested, a European one, Health Action Plan Against Antimicrobial Resistance. It has also been discussed by the United Nations, obviously by the WHO, by the Food and Agriculture Organization, and it has also been discussed in G7 and G20 forum. Now, obviously, the problem has also been brought to the attention of the public opinion by media. And here I'm reporting some newspaper journals, some newspapers articles. So, for example, The Guardian, I think that this really gives a sense of the importance of and the magnitude of the problem at hand. So The Guardian, for example, is titling "Antimicrobial Resistance Now a Leading Cause of Death Worldwide." The BBC, millions are dying from drug-resistant infections. And also Le Monde in France, la résistance aux antibiotiques, un problème de santé majeur. So now, avoiding an AMR pandemic, yes?
I am sorry, but I didn't shut down. But because you are an expert, maybe you can help me. I have a curiosity to ask. If there is super bacteria and it kills the person infected, how can it spread? So what I don't understand, to make a biological, how do they propagate? It's not like the
they are transmissible, right? So that's the point. If the antibiotic is not working,
so it jumps from the patient, maybe the dog who was involved.
Yeah, so maybe field can tell you better, but because these are transmittable diseases, right? So
and they are
there are some bacteria from the ice age.
No, how they propagate.
So they survive. They survive very long time.
That's why this is a very important topic, because if the antibiotic. Sorry.
So they can survive because the patient, before being hospitalized, disperses the new super bacteria in the environment, and then maybe a month later.
Or
because they can survive in the environment for time.
Yeah. Yes, so an AMR pandemic can be avoided if we obviously foster innovation in AMR boosting antibiotics. So we need to innovate, we need to have new antibiotics in order to be able to fight AM resistance. And this is because, again, my understanding, and Hilde maybe could confirm, is because a new molecular entity would not be known by the bacteria, and therefore resistance could not possibly have developed. So this is why we always need to innovate and to have new antibiotics. Now, the problem is that the antibiotic market is characterized by an important market failure, because obviously, because of the risk of developing resistance, any new antibiotic should be kept as a last resort option. So we should only use it if other alternative therapies are not working. And obviously, these depresses revenues for pharmaceutical companies. Yes.
I don't think it's low sales, but it's low prices. Because in terms of sales, for what I know, if you combine animal or veterinary news, consumer news, they sell a lot.
So for sure, it's also keeping price low, but also sales, because if you use antibiotics as a last resort option, so only when the other therapies are not working, you're selling less compared to a few decades ago, right?
Okay. So just for the writing that line, I would like to document that. Price and volumes separately.
Yeah, and market power in the places that you need the antibiotics most.
Say again, sorry.
The market, well, the market power, right? That these, well, particularly the low and middle income countries where you need most antibiotic resistance, there you don't have the purchasing power. So indeed, it's volumes, but definitely also the price. That's
I guess the other was, think about rare diseases. Rare diseases, you will have very few patients, but you can still make money if the price is astronomical. Now, maybe as Hilda says, these kinds of astronomical prices will not be okay for companies. So is that the problem? I would say the also linked to Matthias' question, it would be interesting to know indeed, or maybe to come what the relevant market is, because my guess is that AMR is a general problem. One problem, for example, is that in the agro business, they give a lot of antibiotics to wheat and so on. And that means we are getting, because there is a question of how strong the microbe is also how weak the patient is. And if the patient is already used to taking too many antibiotics, it is generally weaker, and therefore you have the problem. And so there, the policy idea would be, let's cut the antibiotics in livestock. But here you have in mind, I guess, these superbugs, as they call it, also in AMR literature, and how can you hit them? And the problem is that for decades now, there is no innovation. And that is a problem. And therefore, and indeed, if you want this to be a useful investment for health in the world, you don't want to use it too much, because then people will get used to it, and therefore this problem of low sales. But I don't know, I'm not a specialist in AMR, but I guess it would be nice to have some context on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the problem is also emphasized by the fact that the novel antibiotics are currently mostly developed by, so the point is that indeed, if left alone, pharmaceutical companies do not have an incentive to invest in new antibiotics development, and this problem is emphasized by the fact that novel antibiotics are currently mostly developed by small and medium-sized enterprises. And indeed, the small and medium-sized enterprises count for more than 80% of the global development pipeline. And obviously, small and medium-sized enterprises do not have the same financial means as big companies. So this adds to the...
Isn't that the usual sequence? First public money, university research, then small biotech companies, and then when it goes well, big firms buy them and expand volume. And so why is it different in AMR than in other treatments?
But my understanding is that the whole problem is linked to the developing of resistance, right? My understanding is that because of this risk, indeed the revenues are low, and therefore a pharmaceutical company does not have an incentive to innovate because the expected revenues are low.
So the problem is that they don't find it attractive to buy
exactly
these SMEs and then expand.
So yeah, so indeed it is said in the literature that indeed antibiotic development is not economically attractive because of low expected revenues. And so this is why it is essential from a policy point of view to elaborate policies that would would provide the pharmaceutical companies with incentives to innovate. And typically in the literature, when we talk about policy interventions in the antibiotic development context, we distinguish between push and pull mechanisms, where push mechanisms are those aimed at decreasing and cutting the cost of developing antibiotics. And among these, the most commonly cited ones are, for example, tax cuts, so tax incentives in general, research grants, subsidies from public-private partnerships, etc. While pull incentives are those aimed at creating markets for these novel antibiotics. For what concerns the pull incentives, therefore, it is very important to be able to measure the elasticity of innovation to market size, because which is what we are going to do in this paper, because obviously this would allow us to evaluate and quantify the effectiveness of this type of policies. So now let me, so the relationship between market size and innovation is not, so the research question is not new to the literature. There are already papers on this, and they differ in terms of the measure of innovation and market size that they use. So and also on the technique used to address this research question. So for example, the first paper exploit the application of Medicare Part D, because this is an exogenous positive shock to market size, and they look at the impact of Medicare on the number of drugs entering preclinical and clinical trials. Finkelstein instead focuses on vaccines, and exploits the application of policies aimed at increasing the use of existing vaccines, and find that this type of policy actually also exert a positive impact on the number of clinical trials for new vaccines. So those policies aimed at increasing the use of existing vaccines also promotes innovation of new vaccines. And then we have Ajemolu and Lee in 2004. Here they use as measure of innovation the number of new drugs approved by the FDA. And they exploit variation in health spending across different age groups for drugs in different therapeutic classes as a measure of market size, because obviously demographic variations would be exogenous to innovation. And finally, Lichtenberg considers the relationship between innovation and the burden of disease. So here they measure the proxy for market size is the number of disability adjusted life years related to a certain disease. Now, last paper, Pierre already has a paper on this, actually, which is the last one. It has been published in 2015 on the Rand Journal of Economics. So they look at the relationship between market size and innovation for all therapeutic classes by using a time period, so sales data for a time period between 1997 and 2007. So what we are going to do, so this paper is going to represent the starting point for the current project. So what we are going to do, we are going to update this study by considering a much longer time period, because now we have the same sales data, but for 26 years and for 56 countries. So about 1/4 of countries in the world. So compared to the previous project, we now have many more years and many more countries. We are going to do this for all therapeutic classes, and then we are also going to offer this focus on antibiotics. Since indeed antibiotics development is very important for the reasons that I just explained. And then this would be, let's say, the starting point. We also wish to expand this work in other directions. So now let me tell you a little bit more about the data. We use IMS Health data on drug sales. So we have both retail and hospital usage. Yes.
From a presentation perspective, you are on this slide and you didn't tell me exactly what is market size for you, because I'm thinking about it in a couple of slides.
Yeah, it will come. But so they measure innovation as the number of new molecular entities patented in a given period. Here is going to be a year. And as a measure of market size, they have the lifetime revenues of the drug. We are going to use the same measures.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's the one, it's the lifetime.
The life cycle revenue associated to a molecule. So for each molecule, you calculate the lifetime revenue in a way that I'm going to explain. And then if you have suggestions on how to do this better.
When you look at the paper of Dubois and others you sent me, they have this old space of drugs, right?
All therapeutic classes, yeah.
And so you're comparing the blockbusters to very minor drugs, okay? And here you will be focusing only on the subsample of the data, right? How will you control for the others? The opportunity cost of antibiotics is then I will not be developing new cancer drug.
That's right. I haven't thought about this yet.
To me, that's a big challenge in these things. Acetylcholine, they both new entities and the generics. If I understood the difference between one and others.
Yeah. We take only.
When others take a major innovation, which I do not exactly understand how they define it, but that's their focus.
Let's see.
But they go across across all therapeutic classes. So if cancer is in fashion, I mean cancer, and then you have this endogenous issue that because cancer is in fashion, it becomes a blockbuster. But then, if now it was antibiotics or switch to antibiotics, the question is when do you switch? If you focus only on antibiotics, so you see.
But then, if in a regression design you are controlling for the therapeutic class fixed effect, wouldn't this at least partially?
This is exactly my
in the,
about now. Okay, that's why
in the design they have the class fixed effect, the class period.
But when you have all classes, you have substitution between classes that automatically.
But at the moment in which you have the therapeutic class fixed effect, you are looking within each class and across time, right?
So I think yes and no. This is exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if totally is totally addressing your issue. I hadn't thought about this, I'm honest, but indeed, what I would think is that if you are controlling for, if you have a period and a therapeutic class fixed effect, you are looking at the relationship between market size and innovation within each class and across time. They also instrument, by the way, for market size.
Yeah, but look at the number of people who die.
Yeah,
or
mortality and population and GDP. Yeah. But so we are a bit anticipating a lot what I'm going to say. I'm going to go back to this in a couple of slides. But so we are using IMS health data on both resales and retail and hospital usage. We have revenues in US dollar, then it depends a little bit on the period. Sometimes they give us in local currency, but obviously we report everything in US dollars, and quantities. Like quantities, the volume is measured in terms of standard units. 1 unit so a standard unit is basically the smallest common dose of a product form. So it can be, for example, 1 pill, 1 tablet. In case of products in liquid form, can be a certain amount of milliliters. Okay. And as I mentioned, we have data for 26 years. So for all the period between 1997 and 2022. Then for the moment, I'm not using 2022 because obviously we have only the first 2 quarters. But so these are very up-to-date data. We have these,
unit of observations is the firm, the country.
It is the format of a drug for each company in each country and in each time period. So it's at the drug level. It's actually at the format of each drug level. So I not only know the sales for each drug, but I also know sales for the, for example, 10 pill box versus 20 pill box. So it's really per country, and we also know the name of the pharmaceutical company. And these I'm going to explain now. We focus on prescription drugs only. And indeed, this data set also gives us a set of other useful information. So we know if each product is branded or generic. We know the date of patent expiration, which is, as you will see in a moment, very important for our purpose. We know the ATC4 classification code, the name of the molecule, the name of the pharmaceutical company, the drug format, and revenues and quantities, obviously. So for today's presentation, I'm going to present a mini version of the project because I'm still working on the data cleaning. So I'm going to use for this presentation data for only antibiotic sales and for the period between 2002 and 2012. So
okay,
I'm taking.
But I misunderstood the topic of the paper. I thought the topic of the paper would be specifically antibiotic resistance, how to stimulate research.
So for this presentation, indeed, I am focusing on antibiotics only. For the project altogether, the idea is basically updating the prior study with the many more years and many more countries, and then offering a focus on antibiotics. And then also extending this work in other directions, which are not clear yet. I mean, I have been working on this for 1 month now, so.
And when you say revenues, that's what paid both by the social security system and
it's
the
at
patient?
the manufacturer level. Yes, so for this time period, indeed, I had revenues in local currency, so I'm transforming everything in dollar, and then we are actually transforming everything in 2012 US dollars using the US Consumer Price Index to net out the effect of inflation. We only keep.
By the way, when you have revenue, that means you can compute the effective price per company, per product, per country. The so-called secret prices, you know.
So in the analysis, we are not taking prices into account.
No, but if you have revenues and quantities, you can compute prices.
I can, yes. I can.
You know, there is this minister, the Secretary of State in Belgium, who tweet who showed the secret prices of COVID vaccine. By the way, she also made mistakes on the budget, and since Secretary of the Budget, she had to resign last week. But
no, but definitely you can, and I know that they did this for the prior project. They did this type of analysis, but then they did not put this part in the paper. Yes.
This is the standard data that I haven't seen and know a bit of, but I don't know at all is about the innovations. So what were the major innovations in antibiotics over this period? Because you say that the big plan, G7, G20, Europe, etc., all this started in 2015 until 2017, 18, and and all your data from prior to that.
Yes.
So basically, we are focusing on the period where basically I'm trying to patent something just to say it's patented, but there are no real innovations, right? Or am I wrong?
There are, yes. I see that there are. So
our major innovations.
No, so the measure of innovation is the number of new molecules patented in each year. And I see from the data that there are
Me Too's and so on, just to get new patents so that you can get monopoly power. But for the patient, innovation is almost zero.
Yeah.
And if
so in this sense, I'm not distinguishing between major innovations and
finger on it, but you are talking about the data 2002 to 2012. Even if you could start from 97 to 2022, you have 5 years of your data, which are post all these big movements and they're pledging money to change the research.
Yeah.
So we are expecting major innovations in the coming, I don't know how many years.
Later on, you say.
But it will not be innovative.
No.
Right? You will have this phase of decline where antibiotics are under research.
Yes, so now you're going to, because I'm going to plot it, so you're going to see this.
So this is just, since it's a starting project, you should be careful about that.
Yeah.
You can explain background about why it did not happen, the research, but you cannot probably easily identify what are the keys to switch from not enough research to enough research.
Yeah.
Unless you can use
Yeah.
other
Nice.
therapeutic areas where you really have different switches, and that could be a very nice project, like looking at switches. When do you suddenly start seeing booms in research?
I guess already now. You will look at patent applications and relate that to market size.
Yes.
So, which is not yet necessarily something to the patent and then re-enter into the market. You can at least think that that's an early step. Anyway, you should.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously we only keep observation for which we have strictly positive revenues and quantities, and at the end, after this small cleaning, I end up, so the data I'm using today include 30 therapeutic classes. For therapeutic classes, I mean 30 different ADC4 classification codes, including 531 molecules with patent expiration between 1977 and 2024. So here, now I'm gonna give you a bit of descriptives just to show what our data show us. I'm sorry because here is very small, but so I'm plotting consumption, antibiotic consumption in terms of standard units for the year 2012, which is the most recent year of the time period I'm using for this presentation. So what I find, according to prior studies, is that the most important consumers of antibiotics worldwide are India, US, and China. And then, for example, France is also placed here. We know that France is also a big consumer of antibiotics, and Belgium is a bit more down the list, but because here I'm not taking into account the population. Here I'm plotting the same, exactly the same data, but this time I have per capita consumption, still in terms of standard unit, and for the year 2012. And it turns out that now New Zealand and Australia are the biggest consumers of antibiotics. I was a little surprised to see that Turkey is the fourth largest consumer worldwide. And then we have UK, France, US, and Belgium is here a little bit more down the list.
Do you know why Australia and New Zealand have almost 3 times?
Sorry?
Do you know why Australia and New Zealand are such a...
Yeah, so I was also very surprised about that. It's something that I have to check better. I don't know.
Can I ask you which 56 countries you took into account? Because I think that a lot of monitoring drug consumption might not be reflected in your findings.
Yeah. I mean, when you plot the consumption like this, obviously, yes. True. But so I wanted to show the raw data to start with. And there are, by the way, other studies doing this. I mean, I read papers in which they just, because actually monitoring consumption over time and across countries is already an important task per se because of the risk of developing resistance. So, but yeah, absolutely.
I guess concerning Hilda's question, I understood it partly as, you know, how did you, who are these, which are these 56 countries, and how are they richer countries? Are they poorer countries?
Yeah, so no, it's both. So actually, I have, for example, I have India, China, I have Algeria, I have some several actually South American countries. So it's a little. I have Malaysia, I have. Thailand, I have a mixture of countries. Yeah, I think.
It would be nice to understand.
Yeah,
how did you get
yeah, maybe it would be better to show a sort of map. I have been thinking about that, but then with the bars, I thought it was more immediate. But yeah, maybe I could have added a map, but it's a little bit a mixture of countries from different continents. Only for Africa, there I only have Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. So only
which are the countries
and
which you could expect that at least they have the capacity to monitor consumption.
Yeah.
So you do not have these
Least
two countries that the World Bank classification.
I don't have the poorest countries in the world. No.
It might be nice to show the
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And okay, and then here I did a focus on Europe. And again, I'm plotting still antibiotics overall consumption overall and per capita consumption still for the same year, 2012. And here again, you see that if we consider the overall consumption, Turkey is first, and then we have France, and then UK, Italy, and etc. If we consider the per capita consumption, Turkey is still the biggest consumer, but now it's followed by Ireland, UK, and then France.
It's by the way, it's funny. I always heard that Belgium per capita antibiotic consumption is much higher than the Netherlands. But I don't see the Netherlands.
I don't have the Netherlands. That's why. Yeah, but it's true.
Why is that, by the way? Is that the
data availability?
listening to the IMS?
Yeah. It's not that it's not in my presentation, it's not in my data set. But I also knew this because I read on prior studies doing the same type of analysis that the Netherlands is quite important as well. Okay, then here I repeated the same, but only for branded products, because for the analysis that follows, we only consider consumption for branded products. And again, in overall, we have now Turkey, Italy, and France, and then Spain and UK. And once we consider per capita consumption, we have that Greece is the most important consumer, and Belgium is fourth. Okay, then here I'm plotting instead the revenues. I'm still focused on only branded products, and I'm plotting the revenues by country instead. And this is per capita revenues. So I'm taking into account the population. And here I thought it was interesting to see that indeed for a few countries like Australia, Finland, Ireland, we see that in the Greece, we see that indeed up to some point the revenues are increasing, and then starting from 2009, 2010, they already start to decrease. For some countries, for example, Belgium, France, it is already decreasing. Also Italy, it's on a decreasing trend already during this time period. So here instead, yes.
Yeah, again, in terms of the importance of the definition of market size. So a person in a law would say, you have these antibiotics, there are probably more and more generics entering the market, so the revenues per firm will decline. Although the overall consumption of antibiotics probably is stable or even increasing. And then your story will be, I have this declining trend, I also serve less innovation, it's a vicious circle that reinforces. But if you look at the number of deaths, the market size is actually increasing because you have more and more super bugs are coming up. So depending on your market definition, because when you said which will be your market size, even the story that you started with, I would say maybe another definition for the market size is the number of people that die every year, or something that we have nothing.
But we're gonna instrument for that. We're gonna use mortality as an instrument.
Think about the problem, because the definition of your market size gonna play a crucial part in the story. Because if you use one definition, you can have a decrease in market size. If you use another definition, like it's stable, if you have the number of deaths or superbugs, it might be actually upward, the trend in market size. So I don't know, but I found it something you want to think about.
Yeah.
Also, I think the same line, when you say, okay, generics are competition, we already there in the book shown that not necessarily competition because there are easy ways to find something a little bit better, and then doctors will prescribe that. But if it's really a real innovation, then the price of all the drugs doesn't matter because you don't have it important and really good. If not cutting your leg is helpful. So I think in that sense, having indeed the number of patients that could have this, I think in a sense that should be the driving force, and hopefully Social Security would pay for what is needed, because anyway it won't be a billion euros per patient. So, so indeed the question of relevant market is key.
That's exactly the value that they use in the other paper in 2015.
Yeah.
So it's the one, the other, the last paper.
Yeah, now I'm getting to the point. So here instead I'm plotting the number of new molecular entities, first patented, so first means across countries, in each year. And here I thought it was indeed interesting to see that starting up to, we have up and downs obviously, but up to the middle of the 70s, more or less, we are on an increasing trend, and then it starts to decline until the most recent year, 2002, we are back to the same level as in 1957.
Which is saying that in many recent years, only one new molecule in the world per year.
Across the countries I have.
The most important countries in terms of innovation. So that's indeed one brain.
Well, it's maybe not relevant to what you're discussing now within your research, but I'm wondering also in how far you include alternative options, for example, phage therapy or something that also needs to be looked at. Also low in potential, I would say, for companies to invest in, because it's really personalized medicine. But I think this should also definitely deserve a room in your research.
Yeah.
Or at least in your discussions.
Thanks.
Yeah. My understanding is that at this point, it's such a personalized medicine that it's not a big business, right?
Yes, but I think as an alternative, knowing that the problem of AMR increases every year, it might become more or less resort. Yeah.
No, thank you. We almost said everything essentially. So the relationship between market size and innovation is investigated through a regression design that looks approximately like this. So on the left-hand side, we have the number of new molecular entities patented in each period T. For this presentation is gonna be the year. And then our measure of market size, which is the global lifetime revenues associated to the molecule the molecule or the molecules patented in the same period. Now, the fact is that obviously in the old project, but also in this presentation, I have only 11 years of data. and a drug on average yields positive revenues for about 20 years. So we cannot observe directly the revenues for each and every year. So in order to, we want to calculate the lifetime revenue of the drug, of each drug. So for those years where the revenue is not observed, we need to estimate it. And we estimate by using this formula, essentially. What we consider, so we first calculate an average evolution of revenues for all the drugs in the same therapeutic class between patent age T+1 and T. And when the revenue for a given drug in patent A year T+1 is not observed, we replace it by multiplying this factor delta by the revenue at patent age T. I don't know if it's clear.
No, sorry, what's the data? It's
an average, so obviously each molecule, imagine, belongs to a therapeutic class. So at the therapeutic class level, we calculate the average evolution of revenues. So essentially you consider the global revenue for all molecules at patent age, for example, 2, over the global revenue for all molecules in that therapeutic class at patent age T. And then you take an average. So it's an average evolution of revenues for all molecules belonging to the same class. And in this way, so when the revenue is not observed, we calculate in this way, and at the end, we obtain the lifetime revenue for each molecule globally.
So C is the class and D is the...
Exactly. So sorry, T is the patent age, C is the therapeutic class, J for antibiotics, and D is the drug, so the molecule. So here, indeed, the average, indeed, you see, you take the number of all the molecules in the same therapeutic class. And the same probably here, yeah, indeed, maybe I should have put C here as well. So is D belonging to, for each D belonging to that therapeutic class. And so basically, so in order to calculate these, obviously, we first need to calculate the average, the revenue for the global revenue for each, for the set of drugs by patent year. So basically, what I'm plotting here is what we need to use to calculate this ratio here. So here I'm plotting basically the global revenue by patent age. And here, what's interesting, I think, is that as the molecule is patented, so at the beginning the revenue is very low, then it increases, it reaches the peak when it is 17, 18 years old, and then already before patent expiration, so in the last couple of years already between patent expiration, revenue already start to decline. And this is a pattern that we observe in any therapeutic class, actually. It's quite, so here I did it for antibiotics, but it's a quite general pattern. Yes.
And I'm wondering how you explain this. Is this through resistance that increases, or what's?
No, so what I have been thinking is that, so because I remember this paper that Michael has, and in which he's basically showing that already before, a little before patent expiration, the pharmaceutical companies start to basically they stop advertising the drug because they foreseen generic entry. This actually, when I saw this, I had your paper in mind. Then there may be other explanations, but this is the first thing I thought about. I don't know if it makes sense.
If you have a new patent, for the same issue, same disease, you will start advertising the new, saying the previous one is really, really bad, and you will transfer the doctors. It takes 3 years. And so the only cases where the transfer does not happen is if you lose your patent because of a suit, judicial decision that it cuts your transfer 2 years before. We could not, by the way, if you have data on that, we did not have enough data points to show it. But when you were looking at the 2 or 5 cases we had, yes, that's exactly what we had.
Yeah.
Typically, the transfer was massive. If you could do everything, anticipate 3 years before. And so the movement is even bigger if you can do evergreening. So you have your new patents, you migrate your doctors on the new patent when the generics arrive. Today, nobody's using the very new ones.
Yeah.
And if it's not you, it's somebody else, then the effect is a bit smaller.
Because also this is not antibiotic specific. It's something that you see in any therapeutic class. Here I did it for antibiotics, but yeah.
But we had only the US, so this is something. I'm impressed by the magnitude of that.
Yeah.
So can you put back on?
Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, your framework is number of innovations on the left. Then is revenue on the right. That can be simultaneity, so you can write actually numbers.
Yes, so
indeed. For the global revenue, the instruments are going to be mortality,
population, and GDP.
The idea that they influence and only to the revenue.
Because the idea is that for what concerns mortality, the demographic changes, it's a bit in the spirit of Gemolu and right?
And then you're gonna, so for today, it's only antibiotics, you're time serious. So in the future, the plan is to have a panel with multiple pharmaceutical categories or markets.
Therapeutic classes.
Because you always want to work at the global.
Yes.
So your cross-sectional
global means across countries. So yes. So global revenue means that you take the sum across countries. And the unit of observation, when indeed, that's why I said the econometric design is going to look a little bit like that, because here, obviously, I only have antibiotics. But when you also have molecules in different therapeutic classes, then you have therapeutic classes and time. So here you would have also the period and therapeutic class fixed effects.
And in that case, it's not mortality anymore. It's going to be something else.
No, it's still going to be mortality. So basically,
it's a drug cure. If it's Viagra, you don't care about mortality as an instrument.
No, but so there is a way to connect each therapeutic class to a given disease, because diseases are coded, mortality data are coded by cause. So for each mortality cause, you know the disease and you know the drugs that are most commonly used to cure that disease.
Okay,
so that's also going to be by
disease is doing something bad, not necessarily the death.
So it's quality adjusted or disability adjusted.
Okay.
No, maybe I thought.
I don't know.
No, I thought I could put. There is a table in the previous paper. I thought I could put it as well, but then I haven't done the ID yet, so I said there's no point to put it in this presentation. But yes. So to each, for each cause of death, you can connect the disease and therefore the therapeutic class, the drugs that are mostly used for curing that disease. And you know to which therapeutic classes these drugs belong to. Yeah, and here is a tentative representation of the relationship between our measure of market size and innovation. So basically here I'm plotting together the number of new molecular entities first patented in each period and the mean global revenue obtained by these molecules. So for example, this means that in the same year, 10 new molecular entities were patented, and the estimated life cycle revenues of these molecules was more than 10 billion US dollars. So essentially what these graphs tell us is that as the mean global revenue for each new molecular entity increases, the number of new molecular entities patented increases. So this suggests a positive relationship between market size and innovation.
Did I read correctly that if I have a market size of 3 billion, I can have any kind of entry between 4 and 7 in a year?
Yeah.
You're saying?
So I'm taking for each period.
2 billion, almost nobody enters anyway. When I'm above that, I may have excessive entry. So I'm thinking about the estimate in the US paper that they say it fits a cost of development of 2.5 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this seems to be again the same thing, right?
Yeah.
When you get beyond 2 billion, you start having entry, but perhaps too much. And for many people to start trying to get to be above 5.
Yeah.
When you say mean, it's global revenue divided by
the number of molecules. So for each period, so here I know that in this year, 10 new molecular entities were issued, and the mean global revenues across these 10, you see, is.
So it's 10 times 10. The total revenue will be 100.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Now, intuitive, I think it's interesting. Intuitive, there is, I mean, an innovation is not an innovation. I mean, it can be a radical thing, it can be improvements. By the way, it has to do with the behavior of regulators or patent authorities that may have different standards across countries. By the way, I remember this paper by Andrew Lowe and others about the profitability of innovation and showing that the marginal innovations were much more profitable than radical innovation. And the way he, which was good, and the way he showed that is that the FDA and maybe the EMA and others also, they can put you on a fast track or not. And fast track means it's really a promising thing. It might be interesting to.
Yeah. So what is the
measure of?
Do you remember the name of the paper, or maybe you can send me later with calm? Yeah.
Because I mean, I thought it was quite a clever paper and showing that. But intuitively, there it says maybe you want to be tougher in terms of innovation requirements. Even though, of course, we do have innovation, but what we care about is how fast the frontier is moving. I think this is definitely an interesting picture.
Yeah, so this is a bit the central, not the central result because I still have to do the whole econometric analysis, but it's a bit the message of the paper.
And is there something special about antibiotics?
In which
or
terms?
if we do the same thing for the other markets?
I haven't done it yet.
In the other paper?
In the other paper, they get more or less the same kind of relationship, but here is more evident.
So there is
but there they did it
entry problem for the super big markets, the ones at the bottom. I mean, more on the right.
Mm.
But the drop is bigger for smaller markets. Is that what you're saying? It's more evident.
Say again.
So you say that for antibiotic, it's more obvious, right? So you can see it more. Same relationship, but stronger.
Yeah.
So I guess if you have this mean global revenue of 10 billion, antibiotics, not antibiotics, research is the same. But when you drop to 3 billion, then the drop in research is bigger for antibiotics. That's what you're saying.
And can I ask?
Yeah. So I think that for small numbers here, even in the other paper, they get the same kind of. So it's just more irregular.
You said it was more visible here.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because you have the, true. Yeah. So because here the jump here is bigger, the increase here is bigger. And it's
increase,
it's bigger and it's a bit more smooth, let's say.
But how do you de-link the financial reward for companies from the prescription behavior, which is the main problem of AMR?
Yeah.
Because, well, I'm not an economist.
No, true.
This is exactly a graph which I would be scared of as a regulator, no? The more you get returns, the more you invest, right?
Yes.
But we should de-link because you earn a lot of money when you have a lot of sales.
Yeah.
We should try to minimize sales as much as possible. So de-link profits from prescription behavior, you know?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, like the price is the result of the bargaining between the payers and the companies. And hopefully, the payers will pay more if they think.
Yeah.
But so maybe I have
the drug is more useful.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it is more useful to more people. And that's how you end up with it.
I think exactly what this point before. But in the case of antibiotics, you have a big disconnect between revenues and debt. Right? And so
I don't know.
Maybe the structure of this market is so different from the normal markets that the disconnect is bigger, and therefore you don't get money for your innovation.
So, but I think that the pool incentives that I have here in the conclusion slide partially addresses your question, because indeed, so the conclusion would be that indeed if there is this positive relationship between market size and innovation, then pool incentives would be very important, obviously, to promote innovation in antibiotics. Amongst the in the literature, among the most commonly cited pool incentives, we have patent extensions. Very commonly, they also mention these transferable exclusivity vouchers. These vouchers give essentially the pharmaceutical company a right to extend patent protection on another product on their portfolio, and they can also sell them to other companies. And then the most commonly cited actually are these market entry rewards. That essentially reward the developer of a new antibiotic. So these rewards can take many forms. Most commonly is the health authority, the state, that literally pays the company a certain fee for a certain number of years after market entry. And in this context, very often they talk about these delinking models indeed, in which basically the sales volumes are delinked from the revenues. And I read that some experimental projects in this sense indeed are already going on in Sweden and in the UK. And then indeed, obviously, we always need also to couple this type of policies with guidelines on appropriate and prudent use of antibiotics. And then, yeah, so I still need to finish to put together the full data set. I have to do the instrumental variable estimation. And we had this idea of looking a little bit also at the role of competition. And let's see.
So maybe some question on this slide. First of all, there's always a trade-off about inducing current innovation versus inducing later on future current innovation, which of course will eat on the market of the previous innovation. So in that sense, it's a dynamic process, and I guess you have to take the two into account. Now, but maybe working on the maybe reducing marginal innovation is not a bad thing, because that will protect at the same time the current innovator. You think, okay, I will be charged for longer, and at the same time refocusing the future innovator towards true innovation. I don't know whether there is any theoretical work on that. On this other issue, encouraging prudent use of antibiotics, okay, that's good. It will, of course, not improve market size.
Yeah.
How do you, again, balance? Maybe what one should do is encourage prudent use of existing antibiotics that have already been around for a while. Because otherwise, if it's about the, I don't know, but there is this issue, and who should be in charge of the various things, because you're sending maybe competing and antagonistic incentives to the firms. We may want to discuss these issues.
Yeah.
So, since it's a starting project, let me just brainstorm about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So per se, saying I'm doing the same as the 2015 article, but with more data, that sounds like it's socially very useful. It's like it's socially very useful, but it's hard to sell and make a name in that. I think the angle of antibiotics is very nice, because then you can say, okay, I can use different types of drugs. I can say, is there something special about antibiotics? So basically, do we need specific interventions about antibiotics? We know antibiotic resistance is a big problem. You listed all the potential costs if things don't go well. Then why is that not happening? And so saying, I have, if I do the plot of all these innovations that you did in for antibiotics versus, and then you can list a number of these other drugs and say, okay, the point is simply the market brings less money, or the market, maybe it's something more difficult to do, maybe it's too much competition. We are so used that antibiotics are distributed for free. In France, you don't pay. If you need antibiotics, it's zero. So we are so much in the mindset that this is for free that these firms just don't want to enter that. So that then the opportunity to correct is that part, the pricing, or maybe it's something else. And just being able to tell people, okay, I have this universe of drugs, I have different countries, etc. I can say now antibiotics look like this on the distribution, or they are something apart. And that would be very interesting.
No, definitely.
Because And then when it worked, so you have these, I read this one book of Michel yesterday. It's quite funny because some of these major innovations like the statins were just like a random finding, and it became one of the best sold drugs on the planet. But nobody, it's not that they were researching that, but they got lucky.
Yeah.
And then Merck bought the thing and started producing it scale. So here it's more of this systematic innovation that, doing those research ends up finding something. And so having a list of cases where you had this problem of too little research and then something happened and it triggered more research, that would be very useful.
Yeah.
And again, I would try to find, since you have 50 years of data in the end, try a few slumps and bumps in terms of research and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I guess you know that all this EU logic of separating infrastructure, transport, and production started with phone companies. But they made a major mistake there, which is that it worked for phone companies because there was a buoyant market already. So you had these national monopolies, you had the American firms who could sell the service, so you had to dial in a number in the US, 0800 or something. They would call you back, you would say who you need to call, and they would call the two of you from the US. Something was working. So this is exactly, to me, the barrier of these random situations. You find an innovation, it's moving. You don't need to do much. And then they try to transpose that to trade and gas, and this was a perfect mess because these markets did not react the same. And so I think this would be amazing if this broad data set, you could start touching upon such questions. Like we have a case where you have a strong resistance to developing antibiotics. Is it just the market size? We need to know. Then the answer is let's increase prices or guarantee revenue. Or is it something more like, yes, but nobody knows, and then we need to practice fundamental research in universities and not try to stimulate companies, right?
It is true that here the underlying idea is that the people who are supposed to give the solution are these private companies.
Yeah.
But maybe indeed what is needed is some of the top researchers in universities in the world to focus on this.
And then you don't care about money.
But I don't know. And then there is indeed a serendipity that you're looking for something and you find something else. And then I guess financing frontier fundamental research is the thing because you allow people to look at what they think about looking at, and it's not directed research like in Pfizer is good at expanding the mRNA vaccine. They didn't come up with it, right? It was biotech, and they were connected to universities and the like. I guess it's a bit of everything. So, but it would be interesting to have some more context about where exactly the bottlenecks seem to be.
That's why I think saying it's different, or is it just on the line compared to the other? That to me is one of the key questions you can ask, and other people probably not.
Sorry, say again.
So you have antibiotics across different ADC classes?
No, most of the antibiotics are in the same therapeutic class. It's sorry, because I had in mind the ATC1 class, which is the J class, but then it's 30 ATC4 classes.
So if you look at profitability, market size of classes, you have antibiotics, which is one type of drugs, then you have other type of drugs. They look different.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting to know. And nobody could do it.
Yeah.
You didn't have the data before.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions?
I have like a small comment, but I don't know if there's enough data to use. Just in the sense of like prescriptions being appropriately made for antibiotics specifically, there are some countries in which like, you don't usually need a doctor to get a prescription for antibiotics. Like I know Switzerland, for example, in Europe, versus I think in Belgium you actually do it. And I wonder if there are specific times that maybe coincide with the period you are looking in which like they change these.
That would be nice. Would be nice. I haven't looked at that, but would be nice to.
If you have that, like that affects demand and market size, so you could combine it with what you already have and maybe that gives you.
Yeah, I'm using the same kind of policy change in my past job market paper, but for opioids, so it was another market. Yeah, but that would be nice.
I think more than prescription on prescription, you had changes in policies. I remember 10 years ago, I think in Belgium, they started telling doctors don't prescribe antibiotics.
That's right. Guidelines.
Yeah, but yeah, also in France now they have these objectives, so they get so physicians get rewards if so basically the health authority is giving a sort of limits. So for these requirements, you get some awards from the state at the end of the year. So this, in this sense, something has been done in France as well. I know. Yeah.
They don't want to take too much time. In a sense, the research question to me is a bit trivial. So, of course, if there is more money on the table to make, I invest more. Principle number one of business.
Yeah, true.
So the fact that market size pushes investments and so innovation is not particularly striking. Maybe your story is simply that if you are a manager in the beginning of 2000s, runs a pharmaceutical company, the extra demand created by this bacteria is very small. So 6 of them account for most of this problem. So 50,000 deaths, for example, for the super resistant bacterial pneumonia, are probably in a year 10,000 patients. Is it justifying 10 billions of investments in a new antibiotics with already wide range of alternatives for all the other bacteria that still work? Maybe. So my point is, it's not surprising.
No.
And you can write the piece where you show that indeed the perceived market size of companies grow for 2 decades, very small investments into discoveries because the technology that we had already was relatively okay. There was already on generics. The seed potential of the market was low. And that's it. But it's a policy problem now. So maybe we'll see more innovation in the future, and maybe you can look at other markets where the dynamics were different. I don't think they are very different antibiotics than the rest. And yeah, the problem is how to capture really the value of bringing to the market a new product. Suppose that the French government said this new super antibiotic that we found, use it only for these special bacteria as a last resort. So then really your sales. So you're going to treat 5,000 patients in a year. So unless they pay you really a lot, there's not much money to make. So I don't invest. So I keep thinking that the market size definition that you're going to use is really going to drive the story that you say. And maybe you want to go for this more fine-tuned measure of market size, and you may want to exploit the arrival of the super bacteria for your identification strategy and not the idea that you had before. If you want to focus on antibiotics. because the arrival of the new superbacteria creates a jump in the reward, which is exogenous.
Yeah, it's an idea, yeah.
Because otherwise, it sounds silly.
At the same time,
So, but
I guess, at the same time, it's a bit like with the with COVID.
There was a lot of
There
money.
is a risk that something like that could happen, and we better be ready. Okay, this time we were lucky. It still took 9 months to get there, and it was a miracle. The question needs to be, what is the value of being ready 6 months earlier? Because this is a vicious disease. So if all of a sudden this superbugs become really very contagious, then having explored better how to expand the set of now you might say that's more of a societal concern than a private concern, and therefore it's maybe not surprising that business is not reacting yet. Now, what you document is that business is reacting to some extent, and maybe reacting in the proper way from their point of view, but that indeed you may want to help. Now, whether it should be through higher prices for these things, or whether it should be more fundamental research, this remains a question. But I think that, but indeed, defining relevant markets and exploring potential different concepts of what relevant market is might be interesting.
And also I wanted to add something. It is true that obviously observing a positive relationship is very intuitive. But so what it has been discussed also in previous papers, those that I showed at the beginning, so you may still be interested in the magnitude. Most of these papers get an elasticity of innovation to market size that's below 1. So then the question is why innovation is responding less than proportionally. And there is a discussion about that also in the prior, in the previous works.
So related point, which is a little bit about the marketing of the whole one, and the second part of the definition of a country. So I thought that one possibility by thinking of Mattia, taking it twice it up, saying, well, suppose you have markets which are potentially very big, but then regulation is restricting the market size, exactly because of restriction rules which are very rigid. Suppose this changes somewhat. When the potential market becomes, so let's see whether the firm will actually anticipate this. So does it happen consequently to that kind of change? Is there a policy change, or it happens before? Because then there's a big question, and it does. So are they expecting it? They might be actually lobbying for it. But so, could you explain the timing of this bit in terms of when there's a policy change? Trying to see whether, at the moment where this reaction happens, you could say more about.
So, but I guess indeed something that I had a bit in mind was the following. In different countries, because here we have 56 countries, and indeed you may have different regulations. But at the time in which you take the global revenue, you're not really taking this into account. So I don't know if this is an issue.
I understand, but then there's also the following point that why the country then serves as a point of reference at all?
Why, sorry?
Why a country serves as a point of reference at all? Meaning that you could say the innovation doesn't stop at the border, right? Or does it? So, in other words, so your main regression is just exploiting the timing because it does implicitly assume that the country border doesn't matter. But But in all the discussion about the regulation and so on, it seems like to some extent it does. So it's somewhere in between, right? So it's like if you have one global market, there are no restrictions about how to, whether you can exploit that. That no, the only thing that matters is the team, right? But what people are saying, it looks like essentially you can have long periods where some markets remain undeveloped, exactly because of the regulation. And the interesting question is, does this restrict innovation or not? And I don't know if the paper is exhaustive. But then it would be much more interesting question. Or more challenging.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. It is 1 minute before 2, so I suggest we close here. Thanks a lot, Ilaria.
Thank you for having me.
Presentation, very nice discussion. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.